Let's deal today, Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach, with a question about machine ibud, which means processing the material of the either the cloth or the material you do the batim for the tefillin, which is also relevant to many other topics in the Torah, like for instance tviyat tzitzit, the spinning of the threads of the tzitzit, which needs to be done lishma. All these things need to be done lishma. What does it mean lishma? It means for that purpose. It needs to be done leshem tzitzit. So the tviyah needs to be lishma leshem tzitzit. Same thing would be with the ibud or anything you do for the tefillin. Anything you prepare for the tefillin, whether it is the sewing, whether it is even starting with the very basic ibud that we're talking about, then going into the process of writing of the cloth, and whether you do the batim, it's making them square. As we'll see, there's many dinim, all needs to be done lishma, which means you need to say that you do it l'shem kedushat tefillin. That idea of l'shem kedushat tefillin, says the halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, that you only need to do it in the very beginning, which means when you start, and then you don't need to say it anymore. As long as it's one person that's continuing to do it, it's good enough. If there's another person that comes to continue the process, then he needs to say also that it's l'shem kedushat tefillin. But the same person, whatever he does afterwards, as long as he said it in the beginning, so that's enough, that's sufficient. The ibud and everything else that continues afterwards as well would be covered with one time that he says Hashem Kedushat Tefillin. Now, it's not only for Tefillin, this idea goes to other places as well. There's the main examples are the stam, the tviyat tzitzit as we mentioned, ktivat get, that needs to be also done lishma, and also when we're dealing with a Sefer Torah, etc. So let's deal with the idea of, first of all, a goy, because that's something that we have openly in the Shulchan Aruch. Machloket, the Rosh and the Rambam. The Shulchan Aruch brings this machloket in few places on the din of lishma. If you start with Ilchot Tzitzit in Siman Yud Aleph, it says Tva'an Nochri. If the Nochri spinned the thread, which is called Tviyah. What's the difference between Tviyah and Shezira? Shezira means you take few threads that you spinned and you connect them together. So let's say you use 8 threads, thin threads, and you want to make it thicker, so you spin them together, and that's called Shezira. How do they hold? How do they hold? We saw this in the past. Do you remember? When you spin, so you're spinning it, it should come out. When you take, let's say, after you spinned, you take 8 of those threads, and you want to spin together in order to do shezira, all the 8 threads that you did on each one tviyah, you want to do shezira, spinning them all together. How do they hold together? Why doesn't it just open up? How does it hold so strong and so tight? It's so interesting, no? So what's the answer? The answer is, very interestingly, is that you do counter spinning, which means, let's say you do the tviyah spinning to the right. When you do shezira, you spin everything to the left. So then it's counter, it holds itself. Very interesting. If anybody wants to try it, take for instance 2 threads. I tried it a few times, 3 threads, and spin them, and then put them together, and each one would lock on the other. Very interesting. When you leave it the way it is, it's just going to spin right out. But when you you hold it, and you put few threads to it, or even just a second thread, they would spin one into the other and lock out. That's an interesting thing. Anyway, Tvan Nochri. The Tviyah needs to be done lishma. The din of lishma is only done by Yid. Why is that? Because you have to have in mind when you do it. It's not only words that you're saying Leshem Tzitzit, but rather you have to have that in mind. You have to. It's a real intention. Can you have an intention, that intention, with a nochri, with a goy? Can you have such an intention by choresh otev katan? Normally not. Goy also, normally he wouldn't have, he might say it, but the intention he wouldn't have. Or should we say that he does have? That's the question. And this we'll see whether it works also for machines. It's very important. Today you have everything done, you have everything done with machine. Not everything is machine, but every item, every mitzvah item you could buy a machine. So you can have tviyah by a machine. People are makpid to buy avodat yad, that it wasn't done with machine. You have tefillin, that whether it is the parshiot or the batim or other things as well, there's the retzuot that are machine, done with machine, and you have those that are avodat yad, and so on and so forth. Also, when we're dealing with lishma, we have the din of matzah. Matzah also needs to be shmura l'shem matzah. So over there, shmura means a little bit different. It doesn't mean the lishma over there doesn't mean l'shem the matzah, but rather it needs to be that in mind that you shomer l'shem shmira. As we'll see that Be'ezrat Hashem. So when we're dealing with the very basic of nochri with a goy, the Shulchan Aruch says in Tviyah, סעיף י"א, סעיף ב', וען נוכרי וישראל עומד על גבו ואומר שיעשה לשמן, which means a goy is doing the Tviyah, but there's a Yid over there, there's a Jew that stands on top of him and tell him, do it, say that it's Lishma. And the goy does so, he complies, he wants to get paid. לרמב"ם פסול, להרוש כשר. ונוהגים שישראל מסייע מעט. This idea we found in a few places. We find it in the beginning of Hilchot Tefillin, in Lamed Bet, Seif Tet. We find it also in Yored De'ah Siman Resh Ayin Aleph, in Hilchot Sefer Torah. And this is how the Shulchan Aruch speaks to us in Siman Lamed Bet when he deals with Tefillin. Im Imdo Eno Yehudi, again, the ibud, the process of putting the leather into the tar, the cement, not cement, what is it, like a plaster, right? Seed, plaster. Lime. What does it cause? It causes all the moisture to come out and it hardens it. So this ibud, אם איבדו אינו יהודי לרמב"ם פסול, אפילו אמר לו ישראל לאבד לשמו. Even if the Israel told him, as we explained before, do it lishma, do it l'shem kedushat tefillin, and he does it. Still, it's not going to be kosher. להרוש כשר אם ישראל עומד על גבו, ושיאו קצת בעיבודה. זה מחלוקת רש"י, זה מחלוקת הרמב"ם, and the ראש. We found this.
להרוש לא צריך לסייע. להרוש לא, נוהגים לסייע. להרוש צריך בלי לסייע.
ושיאו קצת בעיבודה, בית יוסף בשם הראש.
הוא כתב להרוש כשרה. זאת אומרת, סיבק. ונוהגים שיסייע. תבעה נוכרי בישראל עובר את הגבור ואומר שיעשה שמן. לא כתב שסייע. הרמב"ן פסול להרוש כשרה.
Now, by get, even the Rosh would agree that if a goy does anything, writing the get, whatever it is, it's not kosher. What's the difference? So the Biur Halacha already speaks about it in Hilchot Tzitzit, where we saw, and he brings, and this is like a famous raid over here. He brings the Gulmer of Rabbi Akiva Iger that says that it seems to be a stira. Why over here he brings the Rosh, and not only that, it seems like he's posek like the Rosh. That's what the Or Letzion also brings in Chelek Aleph Sif Bet. It seems like he's posek like the Rosh because the Shulchan Aruch writes La Rambam Pasul or La Rosh Kasher. So if you learn that Yesh Omrim Ve'esh Omrim Halacha Ke'esh Omrim Batra, it seems like he's posek like the Rosh, La Rosh Kasher. So if that's the case, they ask over here that why is it by get and milah? Over there is different. Alotam Arosh Shechilek ben get le milah. That by milah it would be kasher according to that, and by get is not kasher. What's the difference? And ibud also la rosh is kasher. So we have over here a few things that the Rosh mentioned to be kasher, and get is not. Get is on the contrary pasul. So they answer and say the following: משום שבגט באינן שיכתוב כל תורף הגט לשמה, וזה לא יעשה, אבל בעיבוד לא באינן לתחילת העיבוד שישים מאורות לתוך הסיד, שאומר אני עושה כך לשם ספר תורה, וזה יעשה עקום לשם ישראל כשאומר לו עשה כך. Which means anything that is instant, that's sufficient just to tell the goy do it lishma, he does it and that's it, it's done by then. But do you want the goy to hold a head and continuously think and have the intention to have lishma? That he can't do, he won't do, right? We explained that once, that when a guy comes to work, what does he have in his mind? He has a lot of things in mind. He has the Mets game, he has politics, he has his computer games, he has many things in mind, but the last thing he has in mind is the mitzvah. It's not like a Jew that has in mind, Jew is a strange creation. You go and you have a mitzvah in mind. Normal people, they don't have that in mind. They have all the garbage of the world in mind. So, if it's instant, you tell him do it lishma, he does it lishma, he thinks in a second and it's gone, fine. But when you write a get, every time you write, as long as you're writing, it needs to be lishma. It's not an instant thing that you do, but rather it's nimshach. It's something that's continuous. You can't rely on a goy that he would do it lishma. This is how it says over here. And same thing you would say is v'chen b'milah. Kevan sheberega הוא עושה, according to the opinion that a goy could do the brit milah if you teach him and you tell him to do it lishma, ודאי יעשה הדעת את ישראל מה שאומר לו. Okay? So there are opinions like that it helps in something that is instant. Now, this idea, can we take it and apply it to machines, computers, machines? As we explained before, you have you want to do your tefillin with a machine. You put it in a machine and it does a perfect job, a better job than a person could make, because it's a machine. Machine is perfect. Anything that a machine does it perfect. So over here there's a machloket. Some say that machine doesn't help at all because it's nothing, it doesn't have any intention, right? So when you start the machine, it's not like a goy that you're telling him to do it lishma. The machine doesn't have any mind of its own. So what does it mean to do it lishma? So therefore, according to that, it's not going to help. But you have the others that say that it does help. When you start it lishma, it continues by itself. So you started it lishma, just like you tell a goy to do it lishma, and it does the things that it needs to do. Same thing would be with a machine. Over here,
according to those who say that if you started it, that means it goes by what you started. That even according to Rambam, it should be depend on the מחלוקת של הרמב"ם.
למה?
כי לרמב"ם, גוי דעתו נפשה בי, ופה אין פה דעת בכלל. רק מה נגיד שההתחלה של היהודי זה נקרא שהוא עשה, הוא התחיל את זה, הוא עשה את זה, אז זה גם צריך לעבוד לפי הרמב"ם.
You want to say that a goy ruins it.
Right.
You're saying when you told the goy to do it, that much we don't say.
No, there's no doubt at all by a goy.
There's no doubt by a goy. So just also a machine doesn't. There's no doubt.
But the Rambam says
We don't say that a goy. We don't say that a goy would intentionally think the opposite to make sure that it's not going to be done for mitzvah.
So those who say the machine is okay, אין פה דעת בכלל. So what do they rely on? That the fact
Same
that
thing
you
like a goy.
started the machine.
Same thing. The same way.
The fact that you started the machine, it means
So
that
let's see.
you did the.
Let's see what they
started.
say.
You do it. It's your koach.
Let's see what they
It's your
say.
koach. If it's your koach, then it should work after the Rambam.
It's your Yisrael there.
Siyod Yisrael is an extra thing, right? It's not
It doesn't
ma'akev.
work for the Rambam. The Siyod Yisrael.
It's the Rosh, right?
Doesn't work for Rambam. זה רק
Right.
מנהג. לראש לא
Right.
צריך את זה.
And לא צריך את זה, ואף על פי כן זה כן.
If the Jew started it, then the guy did the rest.
לא.
The Jew put it in the seed and he
עשה
did
הכל.
everything else.
זה משהו אחר, כן, זה לא רמב"ם.
So even though the guy did everything else, the Rambam says it's fine because the Jew put it in. So he's saying lechzat kaftor or whatever it is that the Jew did by the machine. That's as if the Jew started it.
Okay, so that's the
So
opinion.
he's saying
That's
therefore, right. So he's saying no, if that's the case, that'll go even according to the Rambam. That's what he's trying to say.
Of the kavana, but what did it
No,
say?
when
It's
you-
ketiva.
When you,
That may solve a problem of kavanah, but it's not considered ketiva.
Let-
Just push the button.
let's explain another point just to make sure that we understand this correctly.
But
When we're dealing with tefillin specifically, we have in tefillin, besides the fact that you need to have lishma. By the way, in many things you need to have also koach gavra. It's different things, koach gavra, lishma. But in tefillin you have something else also. Not enough to have lishma, but you need to have also the idea that is called ukshartam uchtavtam. The Torah says, kol she'eno b'kshira, eno b'chtiva. Which means, in order for you to be able to write tefillin, you have to also wear tefillin. You have to also perform the mitzvah of tefillin. So therefore, a goy, or for the same token, a child, or for the same token, a lady, right? Or a machine, they're not bichlal kshira. They're not bichlal kshira, they're not bichlal ktiva. Now, does it apply only, also by the way, also a person that doesn't believe, she'eno b'kshira or she'eno ma'amin ba, he doesn't wear tefillin for any reason, right? There are some exceptions to this, but normally that's the rule. A person that doesn't wear tefillin, for instance, many poskim would be posel sofer to write tefillin de Rabbeinu Tam if he himself doesn't put Rabbeinu Tam, because for Rabbeinu Tam is not bichlal kshira, it's not bichlal kshira, it's not bichlal ktiva. So therefore, when you buy Rabbeinu Tam, it's correct, at least according to many poskim, to make sure that the person that wrote the Rabbeinu Tam also puts on Rabbeinu Tam himself. Anyway, it says over here.
You think everybody is connected to Mr. Rabbeinu Tam, some put on, some don't, but everybody is subject to that.
So those opinions hold that it's not bichlal kshira. It's not. If you hold that the tefillin of Rabbeinu, there's a machloket how to view Rabbeinu Tam. What is it? Is it one? Is it either Rashi or Rabbeinu Tam the kosher tefillin, but not both? That's the way the Shulchan Aruch holds. The Shulchan Aruch says that it's either Rashi or Rabbeinu Tam. That's the real way to write or to set up the tefillin, and therefore the Shulchan Aruch is posek like Rashi, but it says that you should also wear Rabbeinu Tam just to cover that opinion that maybe that is the correct tefillin. And he says that you should say a tanai beforehand that you're putting that, and if it's not the correct way to have tefillin, so it's keretzuot be'alma. You mechaven not to be yotzeh that mitzvah in case that is not the correct mitzvah. Why? Because otherwise you're over on bal tosif. You're wearing tefillin that you shouldn't wear. You're wearing something that you shouldn't wear. So you have that machloket over here according to Pshat. According to Kabbalah, Ben Shchai brings down the Zohar, the Arizal, that Eliyahu Navi, he had a Gilui Eliyahu Navi that came to him and told him that both are correct. Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam both are correct. And therefore, accordingly, we can clearly understand that you have to wear both of them. You can't just be yotzeh with one of them. You have to wear both of them. Or you could be yotzeh, but the correct way is to wear both of them. That's why the Gemara says that yesh makom larosh leshnei tefillin, which means you can put both tefillin on your head. Why is that? It specifically comes to emphasize that a person needs to put both of them. So you have over here machloket pshat and Kabbalah. According to the Kabbalah, you're not supposed to make that nai if one of them is not the correct one. It's retzuot be'alma because both of them are correct. According to the pshat, we're saying you have to make that nai when you wear and it means that when you're wearing it together, by the way. Because otherwise, if you put one after the other, you're not going to be over bal tosif. You only when you're wearing it together, right? And so this, by the way, if you want to know, it's interesting. We found this many times. Machloket, for instance, Ben Ish Chai and Chacham Ovadia. Ben Ish Chai would say, like the Kabbalah, the person should try to have both. According to Chacham Ovadia, he goes with the pshat, which means if you wear both of them together, make sure you make that nai. And Or Litzion Leshitato many times, he makes a compromise, pshara. What does he say? Interesting. What does he say? He says that you should wear both of them and make a tanai the following way. It says, in case that they're both correct, like the Zohar, so I'm having in mind to have both of them. Dafka. And if it's like the halacha is like the pshat, which means one of them is correct, so I'm making a t'nai that this is retzuot be'alma. The one that is not correct is retzuot be'alma, which means it's a double t'nai. It's a t'nai, first of all, that may be like the Kabbalah, so I'm yotze with both, and maybe like the pshat, and therefore the other one is retzuot be'alma. He goes a step further than the Shulchan Aruch t'nai.
Kabbalah is for sure true.
Oh, so the rabbi is machriah that Kabbalah is for sure true, but we made on this shiurim over here, and the Bet Midrash over here was sparking with fire, not mine, the oilam, that some said yes and some said no, and but definitely the Kabbalah is true. But the question is, how do we view this in halacha? For sure, it's true. Kabbalah is for sure true. We're not dardaim.
Hamid spoke about it in the Motzei Shabbat.
This Shabbat.
Yeah.
So
He said if it's arguing about the Mishnah, so it's Tanaim against Tanaim. Rabbi Shimon is a Tana.
So we spoke about this. We spoke about what he said, and we spoke about everything. או הדלקת אותו.
חולק על הגמרא על משנה.
או,
אז זה תנא אגנסט
ממש
תנא, אז
נדלקתי.
לא הולכים כמוהו, לא הולכים כמו הקבלה. אבל אם הוא חולק על ראשונים, אז... מי? עזוב, מי אמר את זה?
תחסוך לעצמך, תחסוך, אנחנו שבוע לפני ראש השנה.
מי כתב את הצורת?
בקבלה חולקת.
בכל אופן,
זה לא שנה.
the question is how do we view this להלכה? We're not whether it's true, it's not true. Of course, Kabbalah is the emet and everything in the Kabbalah. The question is, how do we apply it להלכה? Do we apply it and look at it in the halakha like both, like we should follow the Kabbalah, or like we should follow the pshat? And that is the machloket, the mekubalim, and that's a machloket. The Shulchan Aruch and the Rama. You see this in Siman Kaf Hey. In the Mishnah Burai brings down the Knesset HaGdolah and the Radbaz and so on and so forth. We spoke about this in length. But let's concentrate on what we want to say today. We're talking about now using a goy or using anybody like that. You have two problems. You have one that is called Kol she'eno bichlal kshira eno bichlal ktiva, right? And the Biur Halacha says over here, he says like this. Before the Biur Halacha, let's just see first. The Shulchan Aruch says the Shulchan Aruch in Sif Bet, after he said Uchtavtam kol she'eno b'ktiv ukshartam uchtavtam kol she'eno b'kshira eno or she'eno ma'amin ba eno b'ktiva, says the Shulchan Aruch in Sif Bet right afterwards kol she'pasul lechotvam pasul bechol tikun asiyatan. Don't think that it's replying only to ktiva, it's applying to kol tikun asiyatan, everything. What does it mean everything? Says the Biur Halacha. In the Mishnah Burai brings Chipuy Abatim Utfiratan, anything that in the preparation of the batim and the sewing. נראה לי פשוט שהוא הדין כריכת השיער על הפרשיות. בשולחן ערוך in the end of Lamed Bet he brings down that when you roll the parshiyot you have to tie them with hair, and only then you put it. You also the Rama adds over there that you put them when you put the matlit, you also tie hairs on top of that because there's a machloket where the hair should go, on the klaf or on the matlit. Anyway, over there it says that me'akev afilu b'di'eved kedeita barambam, and therefore that needs to be also done by somebody who's bichlal kshira. By the way, you have sometimes things like this. I just had this 2 weeks ago, and I had it previously a few times, that when you prepare a tefillin for bar mitzvah boy, so he wants to prepare his own mitzvah boy yoter mibeshlucho. He wants to prepare his own tefillin. He wants to be involved in the mitzvah. So the problem is that he's not yet bar mitzvah, and when he puts it in, he runs into two problems. One problem is that katan is bichlal katan chereshotev katan, which means it's chisaron of da'at, as Rashi says. So you can't give a katan to do that. Secondly, I have another problem that it's not bichlal kshira. Kol she'eno bichlal kshira, no bichlal ktiva. Not only ktiva, kol tikun asiyatan. So that would be also, you can't put it in, you can't do anything. Kol sheken tzimtzum habatim v'atitur shiur merubahim kol ke'ai gavna, which means very important part of preparing the tefillin is to make sure that it's a perfect square, and that is something that you find commonly, that the ribua of the tefillin of the batim become not a perfect square, and therefore the tefillin are pasul. So either you fix it, and some things are fixable, some things are not fixable, and you have to change the batim. So preparing the ribua, making that ribua, is part of preparing the tefillin, is part of the things that are me'akev, that without that the tefillin are not kosher, and you can't have somebody who's not בכלל קשירה doing this. וכל זו בכלל תיקון עשייתן. וכן מוכח מהמהר"ם מלובלין, שכתב שכל שאר המלאכות חוץ מתיקון האור, except the תיקון האור, which means the עיבוד we spoke before, that we said that you need to have lishma. Over there the requirement is only to have lishma, but it doesn't have the requirement כל שאינו בכלל כתיבה, אינו בכלל כל שאינו בכלל קשירה, אינו בכלל כתיבה, because that's already the processing of the or, and not preparing the tefillin itself, where it's בכלל חיפוי הבתים ותפירתן. And then he goes into explaining that also, for instance, if you have letters that are touching, or things along those lines to fix, whether it is in Sefer Torah, Tefillin and Mezuzot. Can you have a woman, for instance, do it? You have two letters that are touching. Can she take a blade and just cut a little bit over there, be megarer, and you make it kosher? So that's a question in the halacha. It's a machloket. In the Mishnah Berurah, it brings a machloket, and over here it says that אם עשה שאר תיקון, כאשר בדיעבד כוונתו בעניין הכתיבה. So for instance, if you have to bring letters close together, the letter itself, the way it is right now, the letters are kasher, but you have over here other problems that they're too far apart. Let's say you have one word, and the one word is divided, let's say the word leman. So lamed and mem are written close, and the ayin and nun are written close, but they're not the mem and the ayin are far apart, and it looks like two words. So can you just thicken them a little bit and bring them close together? Let's say when you have the word bet, that it's easier to bring back. Can you do that? So over here is more of a lenient, because they're not doing a ktiva, because the letters are written already. So bediavad, you could be metir first few things. So over here we learn the din called kol she'eno bichlal kshira, eno bichlal ktiva. This definitely would apply to machine as well, and therefore let's see how we should learn the poskim that say that you're allowed to use a machine. By the way, you're allowed to use a goyo as well. And we have a machloket on that between the Chazon Ish and of Zid Pesach Frank, how it works. Famously, the Chazon Ish says that whenever you use a goy, it's not that the pshat that a goy could do lishma. He says no. He argues with that with Tzvi Pesach Frank, argues with that with the pashtut of the poskim, the way they talk. If you take a look, for instance, in Mishnah Berurah, in the Biur Halacha, they explain, the poskim pashtut explain that you're teaching the goy to do it lishma. It starts off lishma, and if it's done momentarily, it's not a continuous thing. A goy has in mind to do it lishma. So he does it lishma, and afterwards it goes automatically with dat rishona. Kol ha'oseh al dat rishona, who said that's a big concept. Whatever you do, it's with the first dat that you have in mind, and you continue afterwards. So we don't have to think that a goy had in mind to retract from dat rishona. But remember that concept that I told you before, that whenever you do prepare or write or anything like that, for those things that needs to be lishma, so kol ha'oseh al dat rishona, we say, as long as you said in the beginning that it's l'shem kedushat or l'shem mitzvat, you don't need to continue to say, when I was very young, I learned how to do the tzitziot. So the boys in the yeshiva used to say every minute, l'shem, every minute, all the time, like mumble, l'shem mitzvat tzitzit, l'shem mitzvat tzitzit. There's no such thing. You don't need to say that. I don't know, maybe there's extra kedusha when you say that, I don't know. But do you need to say it? Definitely not. You said it one time, that's it. You can go now, eat lunch, come back. You can go to Ben Azmanim, come back after a month, and continue doing it, and leave off, and continue from wherever you left off. And you don't need to say it again. It's kol ha'oseh al dat rishona. We say you meyached. By the way, when we're saying meyached, the Biur Halacha in the beginning of Lamed Bet brings a machloket achronim. Do we need to say also today l'shem kedushat tefillin? Why? he brings a very interesting machloket that it's worthwhile pointing out. He says that since today anyway, everything. What does it mean L'Shem Kedushat Tefillin? It means that you meyached this for tefillin and not for something else. So he says good, but that was relevant at their time when they used to be me'abed klaf in order to write what you want to take, what your wife would write you on it, what you should buy from the grocery, and also to make a check to your friend, or I don't know what, or to write on it some chidushim, which don't need kedusha. And then when you did it for Sefer Torah Tefillin u'Mezuzot, so you had to be miyached. But today it's automatic. This is how he brings in Biur Halacha in Lamed Bet Seif Tet. He says that maybe today it's not needed at all. Maybe today it's not. The whole thing is not needed. Seif Chet. I'm sorry, not Tet. Chet. העין בתשובת משכנות יעקב, וכהן שכתב בתשובת פרח מטה אהרון, ודע עוד שבעיבוד סתמה הווה כשלו לשמה, תשובת פנים מאירות. So he brings over מחלוקת, ובספר בית אהרון, the end of ביאור הלכה צריך, in סעיף ח', בספר בית אהרון יצא לדון בדבר חדש, לעידנא אין כותבים ברוב על קלף שאר ספרים, רק ספר תורה, the only thing you write today on a cloth is סתם. הווה סתמה כלשמה. It's automatically lishma. If you come to write Sefer Torah on a cloth, or you prepare a cloth, when you prepare the cloth, who prepares a cloth? Anybody in the world prepare a cloth? It's only those that want to do Sefer Torah Tefillin u'Mezuzot. You prepare a cloth. Otherwise, you would not prepare a cloth. There's no such thing.
But still, it's still a problem. No, you can't be me'ached for mezuzah and then use it for Sefer Torah.
So that's a different thing. That's already that's already depends.
You can see from the size. You can see.
And if I can,
No,
since you mentioned
will it be kosher at least for mezuzah? At least for.
He brings over here במקדש מעט that what's the pikpuk b'divrei Bet Aaron? Why it's so clear this new chidush that today it's very different. So he brings in Mikdash Me'at that today they do batim not only for tefillin but also for kmiot. Whether you do it like you said for Sefer Torah, you do it for tefillin, kmiot, parshiot letefillin, mezuzot. Could be you do it for Megillah. Could be you do it for many different things.
He said berov. He didn't say even in his time they did some for others. Today it's more than just so. And at least should it be kosher for the smallest thing? You want to say it's not kosher for Sefer Torah? Okay,
so this is the pashtut of the way the poskim write, that whenever you do something with the assistant of a goy, so the goy has in mind right now that it should be lishma for that time that you told him. Okay? Chazon Ish says that there's no such thing. Goy can't have anything lishma. Doesn't exist. There's no such thing that you teach a goy to do lishma. Whatever a goy thinks has no application to the mitzvah. It's not shayach in the mitzvah. How could he apply his intention? It's not just simple intention. You have to have more than that. It's not just say or think that I'm doing it for that. It's something that's elevated higher than that. So therefore he says that doesn't happen at all, doesn't apply at all, but rather he says a chidush nifla. He says that over here it's the lishma is the lishma of the Jew that started doing it and saying that he should do it lishma. So that lishma applies to the goy, and the goy is like an arrow of the Jew, which means just like when you throw an arrow, not a shliach, because en shlichut legoy. You would think that maybe it's like a shliach. So maybe you think that it's like a shliach, but shlichut, you don't have shlichut for a goy. So he calls it an arrow, chitzav, which means it's your lishma that continues right now. Your lishma that you said, you applied it, not the goy. You didn't teach him. You just had the arrow throw, and it continues going. That's how it is when he continues doing the ibud, and that's a very interesting concept. Now he says, well, shlucho shel adam kemoto applies only by yid.
How does the mechanism work?
No, so that's an interesting thing. A shliach, for instance, at any point he could decide that he doesn't want to be a shliach anymore, right? But an arrow doesn't, unless he stopped actually doing the work. But it doesn't make to us a difference what he thinks right now. He could think, I don't want to do it for the klaf. I don't want to do it for the tefillin. I'm doing this to write on this the Mets game. But his mind doesn't change anything right now. It's not a shliach. It's an arrow. So therefore it doesn't make any difference. So now with that chidush, he goes into explaining what we started off with, the Dagul Milvavan, Rabbi Akiva Eiger, that was mechalek, that the Biur Halacha himself brings down in Seif Yud Aleph and by the Tzitzit, that was mechalek between something that takes a long time, which because you have to come on to that. We're dealing with the Rosh, and the Rosh comes out that that's the pshat in the Rosh. So how do you mechalek between something that takes a long time or a short time? What's the difference? I mean, we said by get it doesn't work, and by other things it does work. By tzitzit it works to tell a goy to do for you the tviyah, the spinning. By tefillin to do the ibud it works. By matzah it would work. By anything else like that it would work. And when we come to get, it doesn't work. Why not? If you say that it's a lengthy thing, it doesn't make a difference because it's automatic. The arrow just goes longer. What's the difference if the arrow goes for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or an hour? It's still an arrow. So therefore, it should continue and be fine whatever, however you do it. And it comes to be mechadesh chidush nifla. He says no, it doesn't mean that it's just simply an arrow. It means that it needs to also look and appear like it's your ma'aseh. It comes from you. You are the one that sent it. You're the one that shot that arrow. If it looks like you did it, so then it's considered your arrow. If not, it doesn't. It's not considered. We're dealing again. Don't be mistaken. We're dealing with dinim deoraita over here. So therefore, what the Chazon Ish says, go. It's not like something that you can apply to a dinim derabanan. Maybe that was the pshat in the Rabbanan. If not, then a different pshat. He comes to say that this is what the Halacha Moshe Sinai is. And therefore, he says that what's the difference between a get and other things? We just explained, it doesn't make a difference how long it is, how long it takes. Not like the other poskim that said that it's the goy have in mind lishma, and therefore it makes a difference because he has lishma only a very short time and not a lengthy time. The Chazon Ish would say a different shot because it doesn't make a difference. It's an arrow. It's your lishma that continues. And then he says that it depends what he's doing. Does it look like you shot the arrow or not? By get, he says it doesn't look like you shot the arrow. Why not? Because the Baal can change and is meant, is asui to change his mind every moment of the process of the get. Because it's very common that a husband could change his mind. You know, he lived with his wife for a very long time, many years. He has children. They have children together. It's a very emotional and hard thing to divorce his wife. So now it's very likely that's why, by the way, when a person writes a get, when the sofer writes a get, they hold the Baal over there like that he shouldn't go and they shouldn't have. We're afraid that he's going to go out and make odah in front of give him odah in front of two witnesses outside to be mevatel the get. All kind of the mamash hold him like a hostage at that time. Why is that? Because a husband is likely, not likely, it's asui. It's possible, very possible. It's something that could be that he would change his mind at the process. It's a long time. Say it takes an hour to write the get or whatever it is, and during that time he rethinks and changes his mind. Maybe not. Let me rethink. Let's try again. Let's have another try. Whatever it is. So therefore, it doesn't look like the shliach. That's what the Chazon Ish says. But everything else that we don't have a reason to think that he would change his mind, it still look like his shliach, and the arrow continues. So whether we're talking about ibud, or we're talking about tviyah of the tzitzit, or we're talking about the matzot, or we're talking about anything else, even milah, according to that opinion, it's something that continues, even if it would be continuous. That's not the point. Even if it would be continuous, it does not make any difference whatsoever. Now, I wanted to say a chidush on this din. Tell me if you agree to this chidush. I wanted to say that we spoke last time and there's a lot what to speak about the change of world. And I wrote about this with the AI, artificial intelligence, which means what is artificial intelligence? That's not a computer. What's the difference between computer or machine and artificial intelligence? Machine, it's whatever you teach it, it will do. It will do it over and over and over again. So you program it to do something, and that's the way it will do things. You go to a factory, for instance, you see the machines doing the same thing. Tuck, 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 tuck. You go over there, it goes this way, and then it packets. It's machines that do it over and over and over, the same exact thing that you taught it to do. In our time, they used to call it data. You put data, and whatever you fed it, that is what it's programmed to do. That's not programmed to do anything else. Artificial intelligence is something unbelievable that it doesn't need you. It doesn't need the human anymore, which means it has a mind of its own. It thinks, and it thinks by its own. Actually, it has a mind right now as we talk. The mind of the artificial intelligence is way smarter than a human mind. It's way smarter than a human, even the smartest of the human minds. Some say that it didn't reach yet the highest IQs of the smartest people, but within few short months it's going to go way over, and within couple short years it's going to be thousands and tens of thousands smarter than the smartest people in the world, because and again, it's not programmed to just take information that it knows, but it's programmed. It's something that builds on intelligence, which means it's innovations that has a mind to think beyond. It's something very, very interesting. So when you have such a thing that you want to do anything you want to do, anything you want to process, anything that AI, which is not a machine. AI is not a machine. It's not a computer. It's not a machine. It's intelligence. It's intelligence. That intelligence is able to do all these works that we're saying right now. So it decides to do tefillin. You tell it to do tefillin, to do anything that you want in the process of tefillin, and you tell it to do lishma. According to the way we explains for the Chazon Ish, and others that say that lishma would work with machines, it can do a beautiful job. So, but can we say that if it's kosher to use a machine, it's kosher to use AI as well? Simply, we say, of course. What's the difference? Just like over there, you said lishma, and it does the work for you. And those that hold that it's kosher, and you can use it, would hold also that AI, that whatever it does for you, it would be able to be done the same exact way, and it would be kosher. I was thinking that maybe not, because when we're dealing with something that has a mind of its own, that is made, not a mind of its own like a goy. A goy is doing things that you told him to do. It doesn't need to change his mind. It doesn't need on the process to do things differently. But when we're using a machine, or not a machine again, intelligence, that the whole idea of that intelligence, the whole essence of that intelligence is to continue building on whatever he knows and go take it way further than that. Improve things 1 billion times better than it was in the past. It works a few steps ahead of anything that you want it to do. So therefore, even if it continues doing exactly that thing that you asked it to do, you ask the machine, you ask the AI, the intelligence, you ask it, do for me batim for tefillin lishma, do it lishma, and you start the process lishma, and you press on the computer and let it start working, right? But does it look? We said that it needs to look like it comes from you, that it's your arrow. Does it look like your arrow? I think that it doesn't look like your arrow, because just like you have in the case of a get, for instance, every moment safek that maybe the husband would change his mind, and therefore the sofer that's doing it, there's a difference between a sofer, a yid, and a goy, because the Chazon Ish explains that a goy, as we explained for this purpose, is like a chetz, But by a yid, it's not like a chetz. It's doing the lishma himself. So therefore, that's the reason that we don't say the same thing when the sofer is a yid. But when we're dealing with something that doesn't look, every second could be that it would change his mind. Something in the process will not work. That breaks the idea of it looks like, it appears that he's doing something for me. Same thing would be if the arrow itself might change his mind in every given second. And even if it's not going to change his mind, even in the end of the process, you see that it made exactly the same thing. But since on the process, you have a safek every given moment, that it has such a mind that wants to innovate and wants to do more and wants to change and wants to improve. That it doesn't appear like it's yours. That's the svara I wanted to say. And if somebody would argue and say that maybe not, so lechol hapachot it would be a safek, in my opinion. And a safek, you can't apply it, you can't use it. So I wanted to say something very interesting. That was the punchline over here. But before that's in parentheses before we go to the next things. It's estimated. Goldman Sachs wrote they came to a conclusion or suggest conclusion that the potential loss of jobs that's going to be within few short years. We're not talking in a long time from now. Very few short years, because AI is right before a breakthrough. That right now, if anybody goes and works with AI, he sees the intelligence that's behind it, the amount of information, the amount of knowledge within a split second. Whatever you want, within a split second, you have such amount of knowledge and intelligence that it's something that everybody that deals with this is shocked to see how this new revelation. But this is before the breakthrough. This is only this is the tasting of what's going to be in very, very soon. We talk the breakthrough is going to happen. It's estimated to happen within few months to very, very short years, and then most of the jobs will be replaced. So Goldman Sachs, it's suggested that 300 million full-time jobs will be replaced by the AI, and yeah, it's an amazing thing. And it would replace a quarter of all work tasks in the US and Europe. Now, I wanted to say that is true for every job. AI can replace every job under the sun, probably, except one thing. Anything that has to do with Judaism, it can't, and not possible to replace. Why? Because you need a Baal Tokea, for instance, for Rosh Hashanah. So you have AI blowing the shofar 1,000,000 times nicer than the Baal Tokea that you brought and you paid him a nice salary. But it's not kosher, because you need to have somebody who's bar mitzvah, somebody that is mechuyav. Kol she'eno mechuyav is not motzi et harabim yedei chovatan. So that's not going to help. It's going to be mechuyav. So right. So the only thing AI is going to be controlling the entire world, and the entire humanity is going to be smarter than anybody it's probably now smarter already than anybody. Could be except a rabbi over here. But there's one thing that, to answer your question, there's one thing that AI can't override and oversmart. You know what? Hashem is still going to stay smarter than AI. And therefore, because of that, Hashem said that it needs to be done by somebody who's mechuyav. So all the psakim of the AI is not going to change that. And for instance, when you want to do any other mitzvah, you want to do a brit milah, you want to do... I'm sorry? You want to write a sefer Torah, you want to write... ההלכה היא שאם אין לך נשמה של יהודי...
אבל הר"ן פוסק בגולם כן מצטרף.
מי זה?
ר"ן כותב בפירוש.
מי זה ר"ן?
ר"ן.
ר"ן? תתראה לי בעזרת השם.
בסימן נ"ה,
כל המערכה.
אבל אנחנו אומרים ככה, the preparation of mitzvot, any mitzvah you want to prepare, it can't be done, for instance, you want to write a Sefer Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzot. You can't do it with a computer, you can't do it with intelligence as well. You can't do it. Those things are not going to work the klaf for you, and you can't prepare the klaf, you can't write the Sefer Torah, and you can't read the Sefer Torah. It's nothing. The only market, the only jobs that can't be touched in the world is Judaism. Anything that has to do with Torah can't be touched. That's a very interesting thing. So if you want to secure your parnasah for the future, don't go to be an architect, because already by now AI overrides our. Now, if you're an architect by now, you had to have a whole team of people working for you to do a very simple task in order to present it to your customer. Today, with a press of a button, all the 50 workers you had for you have a press of a button. You don't need anybody working. You had, for instance, you're in the field of anything that you think about. With a press of a button overrides the work. The job is done way fast. It's in a second, split second, and way better. It overrides the job that a human can do by far. Okay, so that's another point that I.
זה גולם.
Hashem didn't give over to people as a Hashem, life, and Chet HaMeitim. Chaya. But here we see it is so advanced, it's smarter and quicker and stronger than people. So what's the model of people? It says Hashem didn't give over.
It could be that Hashem shows people that they have no mala without Hashem. Without the only thing that a human can have that a machine doesn't is the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything else a machine can do much better, way better. I'm talking about billion times better in very short years. Billion times better than a human can do. Okay? So let me tell you something interesting over here that we need just to have close the angle.
Rabbi, I don't need to sound doom and gloom, but
Yes.
I think this AI is like computer. When first computers were coming, the same prediction that they are predicting was said about computers, and human brains are much more capable than we actually use. We are much more.
Yes. Human brains invented computers. They're much more capable than computer. But AI is not anymore in the control of a human mind, and humans don't know what to predict in AI. They can't predict. It's unpredictable. And AI is already by now way smarter, way more advanced than a human mind. And therefore, the human is not needed for anything anymore. Not for his mind, not for his acts, not for his work, not for his labor, you're not going to need a human even for connection. Which means the only thing that you might think that maybe a connection. I have friends, so we connect together. The connection to a machine called AI, which going to look very soon like a human. They already have that today, by the way. Computers, they have robots that look like human, talk with facial expressions and talk to you regular, just like I talk to you right now. But soon, and I'm talking about soon, not talking about 10 years from now. Much quicker than that. You're gonna have, and they express feeling. They understand you tens of times better than you understand yourself, and therefore that machine will give you all the things that you need mentally, cognitively. It will give you such a satisfaction of having the interaction with them, any interaction that you want, that you're not going to want to have an interaction with a human being, because a human being is a boring creature compared to that. And it's going to be so satisfying, such an elevated experience. I'm not talking to you right now fiction. If you think I'm talking fiction, this is what's in the making right now. This is unbelievable. If you don't understand, you don't know what I'm telling you right now, it's because you still live under a rock. But Anybody that came out of the rock, that is exactly what's going on right now. So what I'm saying over here, which is a novelty, that Akadosh Baruch Hu protected, the only jobs in the world that Akadosh Baruch Hu protected is those that look down upon, the Sofrim, the Rabbanim, that do all these little things. Why don't you do something that's advancing the world? You could have been an architect, you could have been an engineer. Today, there's no such thing, engineer. Today, press of a button, tack, within a second. We don't need for that a genius. Any kid that can download an app can download this app that's going to teach him to do anything. Not teach him, would do anything for him. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. Anyway, I want to close this topic and tell you what's a din when you have something that continues because of you, which means you started the machine and it continues working. Is it considered like it's your what we call in the Gemara terms koach? It's your power, or only the very first thing that you did is your power, but the rest is not considered your power. It's considered koach kocho. The source of this halacha is in Chulin, when the Gemara over there in Chulin Tet Vav speaks about having a wheel that you attach to it a knife, and you want to shecht the animal with it. So you turn the wheel, and the knife goes to the neck of the animal and shechts it. So the Gemara says over there that when it's done on the first turn, it's considered kocho. Afterwards, it's not kocho, it's koch kocho. So therefore, the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Zayin, in Yoreh De'ah, יכול אדם לקבוע סכין בגלגל של אבן או של עץ. You could attach a knife to that wheel. מסבב הגלגל בידו או ברגלו. You turn it around. ומשים שם צוואר הבהמה או עוף. You put over there under it the head of the animal or the chicken. עד שישחט בסביבת הגלגל. What about if you have the same thing, but you using the muchani, it's called muchani, using water to turn it. Not you turning it, the water turning it. Now, of course, it needs to be with koach ha'adam, koach gavra. You need to shecht. It needs to come from you. So if the water is turning it, where were you involved? So what happened over here, you put this wheel with the knife right by the water, but the water is blocked. And then you turn off the block, the dam, small dam like this, bam, and the water goes in, and it turns the wheel. So over here we have a din that there's a difference between the first round that's considered kocho, it came from you because you opened the dam, and then the second round, if you need it twice to go around until it checks the animal, or if you put it after the first time it turns around, then it's considered koach sheni, and it's not kosher shchita. That's what it is, okay? Says the Pri Chadash and the Siftei Da'at in the Pri Megadim, a fascinating chidush. They say, when is it that it's considered koach kocho, that it's not kosher, it's not good? Says the Ran, עד שישחוט בסביבת הגלגל, ואף על פי שמחמת סיבוב אחד מתגלגל הגלגל הרבה סיבובים, כולו מיקרו כוח גברא. But he's asking, why is it that when you turn the wheel, and it keeps on going until it stops, it's all considered yours. It's not considered koach rishon or koach sheni. It's still considered your koach. As long as it's spinning, it's still considered koach. Unlike the water, when you took out the dam, it's only considered your koach, your strength. It came from you only on the first wheel. He says, מה שאין כן בגלגל של מים, דבסמוך. זה פשוט. He says that's simple, that when you do something, everything that happens because of what you did is mityaches. It relates to you. But when you did it with taking off the dam, you're taking off the koach hamonea, as we call.
It's different. Because בסיבוב, כל סיבוב זה מהכוח שלי. Here, it would have...
Yes, זה משהו מחדש, בדיוק. Another time he says, another ראיה, he says, the Pri Megadim brings a ראיה. He says that when you have, it says that if you throw a knife on the wall, and it comes back, it bounces back, and it checks the animal, it's kosher. He says, 1 minute, but it's koch sheni. To first throw while it's going towards the wall, that's your strength. Then it bounces from the wall back, that's koch sheni. Why is it good? Says the Pri Megadim, you see from here that koach sheni, that comes from your strength, is considered what? Koach ha'adam. So you have over here 3 things that you need to bounce every time we're dealing with preparing a mitzvah.
How will you consider opening the faucet to make it koach gavra?
That's what, again, we're saying in Netilat Yadayim, same thing. If you spill the water for Netilat Yadayim, even though it keeps on spilling, says the halacha, it's considered kocho. But when you open the water, only the first thing is koch. If you wanna wash hands, if you want to do Netilat, you don't have a cup, and you want to do Netilat Yadayim by opening and closing the faucet. Let's say we're taking off all the other problems. That let's say it's a kli, because that's a discussion whether the faucet is a kli or it's not a kli. It's mechubar lakarka. Whatever it is, it's a big discussion in the poskim. But let's say without all the problem, opening, closing. Why do you have to keep on opening and closing? Because if you open and you let it run and you put your hands under it, it's only the first water that comes out, the first splash that comes out, it's considered kocho. Afterwards, it's koach kocho. But if you spilled a bucket with tons of water and it keeps on coming out, as long as it's coming out, it's considered yours. Koach, because it came from your koach. That's an interesting concept. So let's summarize this in a couple of minutes. We have whenever we're dealing with this mitzvot, we're juggling 3 things over here. One thing is you need to have koach gavra, as we explained right now, and it has its own dinim. Secondly, you need to have lishma, which has its own dinim. And thirdly, the things that we said when we're dealing with tefillin, that it needs to be kol she'eshno bichlal kshira, eshno bichlal ktiva. And the nafkamina between the two, says the Biur Halacha, would be that only things that have to do with chipuyat batim and tikunam, but processing the leather, the ore, with the ibud, that you don't need. You don't have the problem of kol she'eshno bichlal kshira, eshno bichlal ktiva. And therefore, you could have somebody who's not wearing tefillin for any reason, or goy, do it lishma, then you run into the machloket Rashi, Rambam, and the Rosh. And even according to the Rosh, you have to see if it applies and when does it apply. So in that we talked in length. Chazak u'varuch, and thank you.